And it's always this really awkward thing where it's saying preparing to go live. There we go. And then you are actually live.
We're
So
live.
you'll often see me singing to myself for the first couple of seconds.
Whatever it takes, right, to break the ice and get things started.
Whoops, hang on. There we go. Now I'm hearing my own. I'm watching my own YouTube
No.
video back. Welcome, Brianna.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be spending this beautiful morning with you.
Isn't it? Well, okay, it is kind of cloudy, but it isn't raining compared to yesterday.
Oh, it's like night and day. It feels like spring is back today.
What the heck? I was freezing. I had to wear like my winter coat. I turned my heat on yesterday.
Yeah, it was cold.
Me?
I know. And so when I send my son to daycare, this weather that is so unpredictable right now makes it really hard. I take out all of his winter stuff from his daycare bag, and then I got to put all the line stuff back in and remember a coat and boots and all the things. So I am excited for spring to finally properly arrive and
like actually get here. When does spring actually? Did we already?
We already had it. It was the 23rd.
Yeah,
it was recent.
Like we did, like we flipped over. So what the heck?
I know. Get it together. Get it together, Vancouver.
Baloney. Anyways, friends that are joining us on the live here. Excuse me. Sorry. Excited that you're here. Don't mind my coughing. I have my heater on because it's freezing and it's drying my throat out. I've got my water. I'm really excited for you to be here with us today. If you're watching the replay or listening on the podcast, I am super psyched because we're going to be talking about, I think, something that is, and I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this, drastically underestimated and underutilized, which is using government money to accelerate your business.
Grossly misunderstood, Lindsay. It's all of those things. It's underutilized. We underestimate the power of it, but we also misunderstand it, which I think causes so much frustration for founders. And like I've been through it. It's why we created Pocketed. So yes, I'm excited to talk about all of those things.
We're going to dive into all of it. And funny enough, I was on through the forum. They're doing a really neat financial series right now. And I was like, let me go and check that out. Let me go and learn to see where my gaps are. And you came up today and I was like, oh, we're going today.
I love it. That's so good.
Right? So tell us a little bit, like give us a little bit of the intro. Like, who are you? What is Pocketed? And why did you start it? Give us the spiel.
Yeah, I'll give you the spiel gladly. So I'm Brianna Blaney. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Pocketed. And we built Pocketed and launched it in 2021, honestly, based on our own frustration as founders. I built it alongside my co-founder, Dr. Arya Han, and an unbelievable team of people. By no means is this just her and me. And I want to make sure credit is given where credit is due, which is very much to our team. But we, as founders, had lived the pain and frustration that comes from trying to find money that you need to grow your business. Everything takes money. Everything is hard. Everything is expensive. And when you look at the common denominator for why so many businesses fail, it comes down to capital in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. So we had lived this, building bootstrapped companies, building all types of companies. And as we started learning more and more and accessing government funding, you can't help but ask the question of why the heck aren't more people using it? Yeah. There's more than $5.9 billion every year in Canada. We're a pretty small country, so it's a lot of money. For comparison's sake, the US does over $140 billion a year for businesses. And that's for businesses, not nonprofit, not other facets, just businesses. So there's so much money. And we couldn't help but ask the question of why aren't more people using it? So because, yeah, right?
Well, I was going to say, like, I definitely didn't know that there was that much getting put into businesses, not that much.
Totally. Well, and Lindsay, I had never used it. And I've been building businesses for more than 7 years. And I never used government funding until I got into the tech sector. Yeah. So in the tech sector, I think they do a better job of educating founders on what's available to you. And they're not the only sector that's fundable. Most of us as businesses in Canada have funding we can access. Yeah. It's not an equal opportunity game. There's definitely certain industries, business types, stages of businesses that will be more successful and simply have more options than when you're, for example, a solopreneur getting started. you have the fewest options, which probably isn't surprising. There's, money that will help you digitize your business. There's going to be a little bit of money that you can access if you want to make a hire, employ somebody on payroll, and maybe some training funding if you want to pursue training yourself as the founder. But that's about it. Like as an early stage solopreneur, that's kind of the extent of what you'll get. But when you start adding employees to your payroll, for example, if you're reaching thresholds in your revenue growth, like $100,000, you unlock this whole other world of opportunity. And for me, if I even just speak to my own experience building my first company, which still operates today, it's a services company. So you would imagine not super fundable. Well, we were able to capitalize on a ton of funding related to digitization, training, and hiring. So much so that for the first time as a bootstrapped business, you can only grow as you have money to grow. It allowed us to take some risks that we couldn't have afforded to otherwise. Yeah. So what that looked like for that business was actually hiring employees on payroll more so than we necessarily had the revenue to support exclusively. And that propelled our growth 500% in 1 year. So we were able to add the resources, and guess what? When we had the resources, we were able to fill their time with client work. Yes. So it hugely makes a difference in giving you opportunity to scale your business, even if you're not in the technology space. And obviously, Pocket's journey with funding has been very different and much more extensive. So I can unpack that, but there really is money for every type of business. And it's so much more about how you're spending money in your business than just what your company looks like. And I think that's one of the biggest misunderstandings of grants.
So many things I want to talk about.
I just word vomited at you for a few minutes.
And I'm like, I'm sitting here going, will it be really loud if I sit and type while you're talking? And how can I quickly just hit mute and then type away? One of the things, the very first things that I want to touch on, we're going to kind of weave in a few of the things that you had already mentioned because it was all fantastic. The first thing that you mentioned is the biggest reason that most businesses fail is a lack of capital of some kind. Yeah. And there are different types of capital, right? There is financial capital, but there is also, like human capital, which I don't like that phrase, but like
wisdom capital.
There's wisdom capital. There's like community capital. There's like the capital of having networks that are hooking you up with things, right? Totally. So like, let's just talk for a moment about capital and what do you think are the most important ways of understanding capital that entrepreneurs need to understand and start building?
Such a great question. I want to talk about capital in its broad sense, and then I do want to talk a little bit specifically about financial capital. Yeah. Because I'm going to foreshadow a little bit. My personal bias is that other types of capital are critical, and so often as women in particular, we're basically told that because we have those other types of capital, that's enough. Yep. We can figure it out on the financial side. And like, excuse me, no.
Oh, yeah, we're going to get into that.
Like, we don't just need more mentorship. We need your freaking money. Give us your dollars. Yep. Just like everybody else, we also need money. So,
well, and I want to say, hang on, because before we even go into that, because that's on my mental radar that we're going to talk about, because women don't go for capital. Women don't get capital, right? And even when there is capital or I should say grants or funding or whatever put aside for women in business specifically, still it is shrewdly given out. Like, it is not easy to access that. Even if you are a woman with a woman-owned business trying to get that capital, it is still hard to access it. So I want to get into all of that.
So do you want to talk the financial side now, or do you want to talk
Let's just get into it. Let's just get into listen. You all know here, what we're gonna say is you need to have good, solid networks. Okay. Yes. You need to have a good community. You need to have employees or teams or VAs or some contractors. That there are things, elements of capital outside of financing that you need. Yes. And you can probably get to the R, and you probably have most of it, because as women or non-binary, folks socialized as women, we are very good at this kind of capital. So let's just say, check. Give me the money. Show us the money.
We may unpack pieces of that later, because I do have some and encouragement for whoever's watching and listening today. I have some suggestions for you as well of how you can pay for it. I think that's important. But into the financial side. So yes, I am a huge believer that women don't need more mentorship. We need more money. And that is true at every level, whether it is the debt that you're accessing from your bank, There's great organizations like WeBC and WeOC that exist that will provide loans specifically for women. And they are accessible, which is great. Futurepreneur does a pretty good job for people that fit their criteria of being a youth, which I think is under 40. So it's like a 40 definition, to be fair. So there's debt. And debt is a great solution at different stages in your business and for different use cases. It's not a great fit for every type of company, and you have to be confident in your ability to repay it, because most will still require some element of a personal guarantee. BDC, of course, is another channel for debt. So lots of options on the debt side. They're not all created equal. Some of the secondary lenders have ridiculous interest rates, which you want to avoid. But sometimes it's all you can get. And if you really need money, sometimes you have less choices, and I want to acknowledge that as well. There is equity investment, which is the one that we all read so many headlines about, less than 2% of venture capital. I think last year it was a drop from the previous years. Less than 2% of venture capital went to women. Before that, the stat was 3%. So it's not great. I do want to underscore what you said, though, Lindsay. You talked about how women often are less likely to go after venture funding equity investments. And that's true. And I think I'm not an expert on this topic. There's a lot of research on this, so I want to caveat my statements with that. But I do think we need to think critically about that data point. Yes, we are getting less than 2% of venture funding. There are no questions about that. And is it because we're disproportionately less likely to go after that funding? Jill Earthy she is an incredible leader in the innovation space and runs in BC, which is Innovation British Columbia, which is a fund that invests largely in other funds, and it's a provincial fund, so it's really, really interesting. Encourage you to look her up. She's a powerhouse. But I was at an event recently with her, and I heard her use the description of women as being risk aware. We are risk aware. And that means that oftentimes we are building our businesses in a way that perhaps doesn't rely on venture capital in the same way. Yeah. We are more thoughtful sometimes about our spending. There's a lot of reasons why that could be true about women. That isn't just necessarily that we aren't given the opportunity. Yeah. I do think that, all the data shows that it is harder for us to get it even when we're going after it. We're asked questions that talk about how we avoid risks versus promotional questions. And WeBC, my God, I feel like I'm promoting all these people, but they're doing great things, so they should be promoted. WeBC has a course right now on helping women understand how to overcome those types of questions with investors and raise money more successfully. So great programming that I think is free, actually. So even better. Yeah. So that's on the venture side. And straight up, Lindsay, most businesses are not venture fundable. They're not. My first business is a great freaking example of that. Yeah. It is not venture fundable. We will never deliver 110x return to an investor.
Yeah, because I want to touch on that for just a quick second. Yes. Because there are many reasons why we're not getting funded. We are underfunded, these kinds of things. Yes. One of the reasons also is that a lot of women typically start service-based businesses, right?
That's often true. Yeah.
Right. And so or businesses that are not they are more of a practical, pragmatic, serving some sort of need business versus something that they're going to build to sell, right? Yes. And so that's just my anecdotal, but also just the things that I have read on the stats that have come out. Do you have something to say on that specific point?
I don't really. I mean, 50% of our users at Pocketed are women-owned businesses. And I can tell you that we have so many incredibly innovative companies that are being built that we get visibility into. So we see lots of women building high tech, deep tech, interesting, challenging life sciences, manufacturing, hardware-based businesses. So I think it's not exclusively true. And yes, if you look at simply the data, it tells a story that women are more likely to start pragmatic service-based businesses, and or we take a more bootstrapped, pragmatic approach to how we build them. And that's, in my opinion, not a negative thing in any way. Yeah. And I've built that type of company before, and my other company is never going to exit ever. It's not a sellable business, in my opinion. And I'm not looking to exit that business ever. And it doesn't mean it's not an excellent business. And I think for so many people, the rhetoric that we hear is that businesses that are better are the ones that investors want to invest in. Yeah. And I don't agree. To me, it comes down to, what do you define as being an excellent business? Yeah. And for me, durable, resilient businesses that can grow sustainably, that can provide the lifestyle you want, not necessarily a lifestyle business, but allow you to live the lifestyle that you want, that provide a living for the people that work for you that you are proud of, a standard of living for those people that you are proud of, that you are a great place to work, that you are growing and creating impact. That is an exceptional business to me.
Yeah.
You don't have to grow 100 times in a year for you to be an exceptional business.
Well, and I think it comes down to, and I know we're kind of deviating a little bit, but it comes down to who's starting the business and why you're starting it, right?
Absolutely. Your motivation.
Exactly. And there are so many different types of businesses to start, and so many ways of approaching entrepreneurship, right? Business ownership. There's no one right way. It is what you want and how you're using your business as a tool to also provide what you want, right?
Absolutely.
Out of life. But to that point, those types of businesses, as you said, they don't really qualify for investment. Like, investors are not, those are the kind of businesses that investors want. They want something that's going to go huge and it's going to make lots of money, and it's going to be sold most likely, right, for even more money, right? Like, it's going to be this big thing. And in terms of where the government is also generally putting its money is into those types of businesses, right?
Ish.
Exactly.
So,
I'm like,
yes,
I was gonna say typically, because there is this whole other side. And this is where I think you come in a really interesting space. There's a whole other side of grants and funding, as you talked about, that give people access through adopting digital technology, whatever, right? Hiring, giving you resources to expand beyond just like what a tech business might get or a manufacturing business might get.
Yeah, for sure. So I think in the government funding space, there is so much money that's related to the activities you're doing in your business.
Yeah.
So again, if you're doing fundable activities, I'm actually going to take a step back. Every type of capital you get expects a rate of return.
Yeah.
When you're taking on debt, they're charging you an interest rate. It's a really obvious rate of return. If you are taking on equity investment, it's again a pretty obvious rate of return. They need to be able to pay back their investors. Like, there's a reason they will only look at those types of businesses, because they also have a financial obligation and a fiduciary obligation. With the government, they actually also expect a rate of return. It just looks different. So the rate of return the government expects does depend a little bit on the program, but generally speaking, when you're looking at a program and assessing if it's a good fit for your business, if you're a competitive fit for that program, you need to ask yourself, what is the benefit to Canada that this project I'm asking to fund will generate? So I'll give you an example. If you are looking to fund payroll for a new employee, you're looking for a hiring grant, the benefit to Canada is that you are creating a job. If you are looking for money to train your team, the benefit to Canada is that you are upskilling your workforce. If you're looking for financing to expand outside of Canada, you want export-related funding, your benefit to Canada is both external awareness, an international presence, and expanding our GDP. So there is a material benefit to Canada from all of those activities. And you have to be able to articulate that. Because if you can't articulate that about your own project, you will not competitively win funding, period. So there is still an expected rate of return. So yes, regardless of the type of business you're building and the industry you're building in, all of those three types of capital are available to you. The fourth one that's available to you is that digitization funding. I need new technology. I need to improve my digital presence, whatever it might be. That's also available to you. What you will not be competitive for is the research and development or innovation funding, unless you're looking to develop some proprietary technology or innovations that could be materials. It could be a process of how you're doing manufacturing. There's lots of things that are considered innovation, in which case that whole big world of funding does open up to you. And of course, things like capital expenditures, expanding manufacturing capability. Like, there's so much money. There's more than 1,700 programs open right now in Canada. It's a wild number of programs. And no human being on the planet can do an effective job parsing through that on your own. Yeah. That's where the use case for technology exists.
I was going to say, like, this is where I want to talk a little bit now about Pocketed, like, because what did you say?
1,781 specifically.
Don't forget the one. So right, like that's exactly it. Like, I think, again, if you think about the busy entrepreneur who this isn't their first language, funding grants, right? How do I go find it? Like you said, I heard somebody ages ago say, find the grant and make your business fit it instead of trying to find grants that fit your business. And I think that's kind of what you just said, right? Like, how are you demonstrating the value or the return, right?
Yes.
And even again, this is another thing I heard ages ago that I was like, oh, I never thought of it that way. Even a service-based business, if you have clientele or are offering programs that are outside of Canada, that does count as exporting. Like, you are exporting that, right? So I think there's the, how do I find it? What do I do with it? And even the mindset of understanding what terms apply to you and how you can make your business fit those terms. So tell us a little bit about how Pocketed serves those folks that need to know all that.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I think we have progress to make in simplifying grants even further. And that's a big focus for us in 2024 is how do we help to simplify it for companies? Because it still feels so hard. And we hear that feedback a lot. We've got over 13,000 companies that use our platform. We are able to develop in a very responsive way. So we're constantly evolving, but still grants feel really hard because they're freaking confusing. I agree. Very few people speak this language. It's actually part of why my team is so special. They speak the language. But when it comes to identifying the right programs, we do encourage folks to create a Pocketed account. And anyone that's watching or listening today can do so for free using your referral code, Radical
Why
Podcast.
don't I share that right now?
Yeah, do that.
You
so Radical Podcast,
share.
You do it. Radical Podcast will get you access to Pocketed totally free. And what that does is allow you to share about your business, and we will automatically match you with the eligible programs for your business. We go from the 1,700 that exist down to the smaller subset of those programs that may be eligible to your business. I'm using the word eligible very intentionally because just because it's eligible does not mean it's relevant for the work you're doing and how you're spending money to grow your business. So that does still take a layer of critical thought from you as a business owner. You do need to think about grants, again, in context of how do I fund these activities that I need? Hiring, digitizing, exporting, buying equipment, upgrading my green technology in some way, whatever that may look like for you, innovation, R&D. How are you spending money? That's how you need to begin looking at grants. And we encourage you to do that both in how the platform is set up and in the filters that we use. And in my opinion, we have more we need to do. We've just introduced the ability for you to interact with our AI Pocketed representative, which will help you streamline that. And we still have more to do. So we will be deploying some really exciting new components over the next 12 months that are going to streamline and simplify this journey for folks. But today, it does require a layer of critical thought. Over time, we're hoping that we can help to shortcut that critical thinking piece for you and make it easier for you to assess, not out of the 170 programs that you might match to, but actually just assess the 5 that are relevant for that project you want to fund. So that's the big evolution you'll see coming your way very, very soon in Pocketed.
Fantastic. I love that. Well, and I was poking around and even being able to register for that. You have like a live where people can go and learn about this, right? And ask questions. And, your commitment to not just getting people money, like get cash in the hands, but helping them understand this process, that is huge. And I think it's very important. Oh man, in a world where all of this for so many people can be still so new and so overwhelming. And, have you ever gone to these government websites to try to understand what the heck it is that they're saying? And
what they tell you is rarely what they're actually looking for. So it's just sometimes straight up misrepresentative, which causes you to go down a rabbit hole. So we're trying to simplify with plain text. Like there's so many things. And then the other hard part, Lindsay, for entrepreneurs, and I felt this myself, is timing. When you want a grant is usually not the government's top priority. Their priority is when they want to be deploying funding, not when you're looking for funding. So there is a layer of patience that's required for grants. They are not an on-demand, bail me out of trouble solution. They are something that you do need to build into your funding plan. And we just actually deployed a free tool to help people build and consider and think through their own funding roadmap and what that looks like. So I can share a link for you to put out.
Fantastic. Is that the one that pops up right on your homepage when you come onto it?
It may indeed.
All right, cool. But if you have a link, feel free to share it if you want to grab it now, or I can share it after in the comments and in the show notes. So I love this idea and I think again, much of my audience, they're newer entrepreneurs, right? They are service-based entrepreneurs. And so a lot of this is, like we said, it's a foreign language. It's a foreign even way of thinking. this mental model of funding. And I love that you said you don't just go look for a grant when you need a grant. It needs to be a part of your long-term funding strategy, and understanding that this is something you're going to dip in and out of as these things become available. You want to be aware of what's going on. Does Pocked, and forgive me for not knowing this, I maybe did know this at one point and have just forgotten. Does Pocketed have, thank you. Do you guys have some sort of alert system? Like, hey, this is closing soon. Hey, this is just opened.
Yes, we do. We certainly do. So anyone can turn on notifications on specific programs they're interested in anytime directly in the platform. You simply hit the heart beside a program and you'll learn about any change that comes to that program. And you'll see programs that are open and closed today, and you can like both and get notifications about both. On top of that, our team curates programs that we push out to our users that we know are relevant. You will only receive that if it's a program that is relevant for your business, that you're eligible to access. So yes, we do that in two ways. One that's, I personalize it for me, and another one that is, we know these programs are relevant for these people, so we're going to proactively push that out. We offer more premium solutions within Pocketed as well for those that are looking to invest more substantially in grants. These are typically people that are getting $50,000 plus in funding in a year. So their ROI tends to be pretty high, their return on investment, because it's a $1,500 subscription for the year, roughly. And they're getting about 50 grand in funding on average, plus, significantly up. But through this one, we curate it for you. So you got a personalized consultation with a grant specialist that's going to help you build your funding plan for the upcoming 12 months. Then you're going to get those automated notifications from our system every time there is a program that's relevant for you that we think you should be looking at and considering in a more serious way. So it's a much more targeted, curated version to access people, not just software, but people within Pocketed. And that's our concierge solution.
I would have to say, because I love that you have the DIY version, you have the like you're guiding people through wherever they're at, and whatever makes sense for them financially at this point, right?
Totally.
I would love to hear if there's any that come to mind, some success stories of people who specifically had never considered funding before, and then what they were able to get and what that meant for them. And I'm putting you on the spot with that one if you don't have any that come to mind, but if you do.
Certainly do. So we have so many different success stories. It's honestly my favorite part about working at Pocketed is seeing the different ways that people are successful with funding. So I'll give you some examples. We have clients. We've got one client that I'll tell you about that is a counseling firm, and they did about $100,000 in revenue. For context, they've gotten $190,000 in funding. So they've literally accessed more funding through Pocketed than they earn in revenue. And that was in 6 months. So it's really compelling when you see examples like this. They were accessing funding to build technology, expand their reach, better serve their clients, pay their staff more equitably. And honestly, as she put it, the founder of this company put it, dream bigger on what they can offer to their community. So that's one example of somebody that was able to have a ton of success. Some other examples for you are a company that does flour out of byproducts from breweries. They create incredible byproducts. So it's an upcycling, and they are a product-based business. They've been able to access funding to 3x their team in the course of 1 year. So Mark is the founder of this company, and he talks a lot about the success they've had because of funding through Pocketed. That's another really compelling example. Countless companies, honestly, Lindsay, that have made their first hire because they were able to access hiring grants through Pocketed. We've got companies that are in the nonprofit space. We've got one that we helped secure almost $500,000 as a nonprofit to build technology. And that's a nonprofit that's getting a $500,000 grant. People that are building life-saving hardware that are getting over $150,000. There's just so much opportunity. And we got the unbelievable privilege of getting an insider seat in these companies' growth journeys. We are their fractional funding partner, whether that is somebody that is using software in a do-it-yourself way because that's what makes sense at their stage, or somebody that's working with us in a more complete way through the concierge solution, where they're also having us do all their grant writing. That exists as well. So we have both ends of the spectrum, and we see success for people at both ends of the spectrum. For people who are early stage, I generally encourage them to subscribe and do it themselves, because I remember being at that stage and every penny counts when you're at that stage. So use our resources, come to our education sessions, learn how to do it yourself until you're a little bit further along in your journey.
I love that. Oh. So, okay. I'm going to come in. We've got the link for the free basic. I'm going to share all the ways that people can connect with you in the chat right away. It'll be in the show notes, but I would love to bring it back to your journey. I have a couple of questions. I just want to hear about your journey and the creation of Pocketed and your own experience. Because you talked about how you created Pocketed out of the frustration that you saw. And I also saw on your website, am I understand this correctly? You were able to receive over $750,000 in grants and government funding in that first year.
Yeah, and it's well over $1 million now. So we've been super successful.
Right?
We definitely are our own case study at Pocketed.
Yes.
No question.
So like you didn't start Pocketed first, and it was like literally I have these other businesses and I'm frustrated and I'm going to start this other new thing because I want to serve those people who are needing to get funding.
Yeah, exactly. And we went from idea to like minimum viable product of our company built in 14 weeks. So we launched incredibly fast. And that's been, I think that's super representative of how we've approached building Pocketed, being responsive, moving quickly, responding to feedback, adjusting, staying really focused on the core of what we do, which is helping companies access government funding, and being careful not to get distracted, although it's really freaking hard.
Yeah. I want to ask about that. What was trying to distract you?
Oh, so many things, Lindsay, so many things. So I often tell this story of how, when we were thinking through the grand vision for Pocketed, one of the big ideas we had that we still both like secretly feel passionate about was eventually becoming a lender and helping people access more types of capital through Pocketed as a lender, not brokering lending, but lending. And I remember doing discovery as you do when you're validating ideas. And some of the most sage advice I got in that process was from somebody that like really politely was on a Zoom call for me because it was during COVID. And they lean into their screen and they go, Brianna, don't ever lend until you have a full-time team of people whose job it is to keep you out of jail. That is the only time that you are allowed to start lending because it is so complicated. And when you're excited and you're energetic and you're an entrepreneur, you just think things are easier than they are. And thank God, because that delusion is part of what keeps us all going in the moments that are just impossible. But that was really sage advice. So we got super distracted by this idea of being a lender. And when we refocused in on what we do and what we do so well, which is government funding, grants, tax credits, and other business incentives, that allowed us to say, not the right time for that opportunity. But that's only one example. I mean, we're pulled in a million directions all the time. And it comes back to our core. Our mission is to eliminate barriers for entrepreneurs. And right now it's focused in on government funding. That's what I'll call our beachhead. That's where we are today. And we'll be for a while.
And I'm so glad that you said that because you acknowledge the delusion. That's what were you going to say?
A lot of it. There's a lot of it.
Because there's the delusion that's required, right? And then there's the delusion that also can trick us into thinking, like you said, things are way easier. And we also tend to, because we tend to be big thinkers and we see potential and we see vision and we see where things can go, we don't often consider how things can go wrong or where things can go sideways.
I think women often do, actually. So I think that can be true, but I think that my experience with so many women entrepreneurs is that we uniquely do think about those things.
Okay.
So I argue that some of what I see with women and what I've heard from other founders is that we think so much about the things that could go wrong that sometimes it prevents us from getting started.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So this is where there's nuance and complexity in this because yes, right. Because can we come back and do another conversation on that specifically?
Oh, gladly.
Like, I feel like we need a panel on this because, in my day-to-day work with entrepreneurs, somebody will create a really cool program or a service or a product or a course. And they think, well, that's it. It's going to sell like hotcakes now. And they don't consider that it might not, right? Or they plan out a whole launch and they put all of their effort and energy and time into a launch, which means they're not doing any other business development. And then if it doesn't go well, they have no money. So those kinds of things are where, I think we create something and it can do nothing but win, right?
Yes.
But on the other side, there is the self-doubt, the imposter syndrome that creeps in. There is the what if this happens that often stops us from sort of like getting that start, right? So I both exist at different times. And it's like, how do we leverage delusion?
right? To get going and
Get
like take the
going.
risk.
But
Yes.
then remember that, like you said in the very beginning of this conversation, it takes longer and it's more expensive and it's harder
Always,
than you realize.
always,
Right?
always.
So I want to point out really quickly, because I think this is really, really fantastic, because you guys started during the pandemic, basically, right? 2020, you got going and you grew quickly. You won the 2022 Odlum Brown Forum Pitch Competition.
Yes.
Right? You were named People's Choice at the 2022 UBC Entrepreneur Investor Showcase People's Choice Award. And then you were named to 2021 Emerging Rocket by Ready to Rocket. That's huge. Congratulations.
Thank you. We've been really fortunate to have awesome community support for Pocketed the whole way along our journey. And every time we receive a recognition like that, it's something that we love the validation for our team more than anything. It's an important story for them to remind them that the work they do is impactful. The work they're doing does change the trajectory for entrepreneurs. And in the days and months and weeks that are so freaking hard, you need those reminders. So that's for us, part of why we're so grateful for that recognition is less about Brianna and Aria and more about Pocketed and the impact that we are having as a business across the country. And we're really proud of that.
Yes, as you should be. I mean, you are literally changing the trajectory. There are businesses that may not even be around had they not been able to access this funding. Do you know what I mean? Like, you really think about the impact you were having on all of these entrepreneurs and their businesses. I mean, I have a tendency to get real cheesy and corny. And it's like, you know what I mean? There are businesses who will change the world that you were an integral part of them even existing in the first place.
Oh, I love that framing.
Right?
Share that with my team.
Yes.
And not that we can take any credit for people's success, because businesses are hard to build and it's so much work. And that small role we get to play in helping them and supporting them on their journey, we're like, it's humbling. You are grateful. You get like an inside view at incredible innovation and just freaking gritty hard work, which you gotta celebrate that.
Truly, we do. The delusion gets us started, but it's that gritty hard work, that grinding it out, that, you know, the in the trenches.
Well, and staying obsessed with your customer, right? Like going back to the example, if you're not obsessed with your customer and you're not making sure that what you're building solves a problem for them, then you're not ultimately doing the best by them. And for us, I just shared a little bit about how I think we're not doing our best by some of our customers right now, and work that we are undertaking to change that. That never stops. Product market fit never stops.
Do you know what? I'm like, I needed to hear that today, because I am the same. I am obsessed with how I am continually improving what we're doing. And for me, where you're making funding, you know, and to me, funding and future development, future growth possible. Right. Where I'm stepping in with people is I'm at such that early stage. Like, these folks are generally under 100K. They are under 5 years. They have this really cool thing they want to do. They want to create, they want to put in the world, and they're spinning their wheels. They don't understand they don't know marketing and sales. They don't have business skills. They don't know what they're doing. And there's a lot of internalization that happens. And I'm sure that you find the same thing when it comes to funding, especially women-owned businesses. There's just internalization happens. What I have isn't good. Who I am is not good enough, you know? And so it's like, no, let me just show you a handful of skills. Let me show you how to write a grant and how to get access to the right grant. It's like, when you're in the service, right, of helping people, I don't know, unlock what they're missing, or open the door to what they're missing so they can apply that. That's huge. And I am a fellow obsessed with, how can I continue to make it easier and clearer and faster? Right.
And you do such important work, because in those early days, there's so much uncertainty. I agree. You're constantly doubting. You don't really know what you're doing. You're often paralyzed by what's next. You're overwhelmed. And I've been there. And, you know, I often ask people, like, I feel just overwhelmed. And it's the reminder to create your top 3 list and just start on one thing at a time. Because if you try to tackle the whole thing, it's really hard. And I think the role that you play with your clients, with your community, is so essential. And I see that exist in accelerators and incubators in the innovation space. But I think basically the rest of industry is so underserved by needs that you are helping to bring to them.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Thank you. I popped into my head too. I had, we had dinner yesterday with a person that I met at the same event that we were at the
Nice.
forum.
Yeah.
And her name is, hang on, my brain needs to get back in here. Her name is Natalia. Her company is Micro Days. I don't know if you met her. And
No.
she has a product, it's a micro dosing, psilocybin or mushroom microdosing.
Cool.
And they're specifically not meant to create an altered state. They're meant to bring in that grounding, that calming, that anti-anxiety, right? That focus. And she's launching April 1st, and she's starting to panic because
That's inevitable.
her brand is gorgeous and beautiful. Her products are amazing. And she's like, what if I run out? What if this happens? What if that happens? Right? Like all these people are wanting it. Right. And that's something, and I know we're going to wrap us up here, but that is something. There is the paralyzing fear of the unknown and what do I do, and the overwhelm, but there is also the, oh my God, people actually want this and we're taking off. And what do I, like, I'm panicking.
I will never forget our version of that, Lindsay.
That's what I want to hear.
Totally. Like when we launched sign up. So we did a lot of things to validate that people wanted this before we even built it. Going back to your notion of like, you build something and then no one buys it and you're surprised. We didn't want to find ourselves in that position, and there's no silver bullet. So like, to be clear, this was in no way a silver bullet, but one of the things that we did to overcome this was launch signups for Pocketed. So we launched signups for our alpha, and we had set a target for ourselves, and we oversubscribed our target for our alpha launch by more than 500% in 48 hours. The same week, I also found out I was pregnant with my first child. So I remember calling my co-founder, laughing, crying, being like, I literally don't know what we're going to do. This thing is very real. And so is this pregnancy thing. Like, what are we going to do? And I tell that story because those moments you never forget, you feel it viscerally still. And you will always wonder, what if we can't deliver? What if we don't have enough? What if people are let down? And oh my gosh, those are such good problems to have. They're very real, but they're also such good problems to have as an entrepreneur.
Yes, they're the fun problems, which brings us also back to the capital of your community. Make sure that you've got a good community so that you can, whether they're employees or co-founders or whatever, right? Or they're just your business friends. Because
we're your hype squad. I have a hype squad and I love them hard.
Exactly. Same thing. Yeah. I've got hype squads. I've got friends. I've got my own mastermind. Like I've got people, because that is a very real thing. I remember when my business first started to really take off, the weird, like, inner stuff started really coming up as well. And I remember reaching out to somebody and being like, okay, I'm kind of starting to crumble under the pressure, the weight of this successful, thriving business and all the stuff that's coming up that's being like, who do you think you are? Right? You're not going to be able to hold this together. Like all those thoughts, because entrepreneurship also has a really intense way, and I'm curious if you experience this, of pulling up all those insecurities in ourselves to be healed, to be worked through, to be solidified in our own badassery. Did you, I know, I feel like I said, I want to talk forever. Okay, this will be the last question. Did you experience also that moment of, ooh, I got to deal with some inner stuff here to build up my confidence?
Always, always. So I think you're never totally sure that you're the best person or the right person. And I don't know that for me, that hasn't really gone away. Well, it's evolved. Where the things that I was worried about today are not the same things I was worried about 2 years ago. So in my opinion, you will always have a version of that, but what that looks like evolves. And I know without question that I have an area of genius in certain things. But I also know without question that I am terrible at other things. And I think that is that self-awareness and listening to those signals as an opportunity to understand where they're coming from. Is it that, self-perception? Is it real? Is it an area you need to bring in external strength through mentors, your board, advisors, your team, your customers, a friend, whoever? Is it something that you need to actually address tangibly? Or is it something that is really a deep-rooted, comes from a place of, your own historical upbringing even, and the environment that you were raised in, being socialized as a woman in a very certain way or as a girl in a very certain way. And I think that those are real things, and in many cases, traumas for people to overcome. And while you may overcome certain things, you are inevitably going to encounter others.
Yeah.
So it's having the resilience to expect that that doesn't go away. The challenges just look, feel, and become different. And I do think that's an important message for people to hear, because I don't want to mislead anyone that it gets super easy. In my experience, at least so far, it hasn't. Yes, yesterday's problems, not hard anymore. Tomorrow's problems, I don't even know what the heck to expect. So it never stops.
Yeah. And as you said, it's that resiliency. Is this something real, or is it just an old story that I need to just remember that, oh yeah, this sometimes creeps up, right? And it's that every time we level up, every time we move into a new space, those things are probably going to come up, right? But you develop that resilience and also that faith in yourself, or trust in yourself, and the belief in yourself of, oh, I know what this is, right? I know if I'm up at night and thinking I am the worst ever. No, you're just venturing into a new territory, and this is a common way of, right? Like you're fine, you're great, right? And that is when, what were you gonna say?
I would also say, and it's okay to feel that way.
Yeah.
And that's been a huge thing for me to overcome, is when I am having those moments of doubt, or like really being self-critical, leaning on your community to be a sounding board. And, you know, I've been really lucky to have people in my own community say, stop being so hard on my friend. Like, stop being so hard on yourself. That's my friend. Stop that. You have so many strengths. And I think giving yourself the space and finding a community that also gives you the space and then helps you course correct is really important. So I told you I wanted to share a few things that I think are really important on the wisdom capital front. And I'm going to do that before we wrap up.
Yeah.
So I talk a lot about ways that we can support people. And I think in any business that you love and support, where possible, buy from them. Buy small, buy local, buy from them. That's the first one. That's not always financially possible for a variety of reasons. If you can't buy from them, some cheap and free things you can still do to support them. Amplify them on social media. Share about their business, engage with their content, post, talk about them. That goes so far to helping other people discover brands you love. Leaving a review will take you 2 minutes and makes the day of an entrepreneur. I promise that if you go out today and you leave a review for a business that you love, you will make someone's day, and it's going to take you 2 minutes. And then finally, speaking people's names in rooms they are not in. That is absolutely essential. And I received an invitation to speak at an event last week from somebody who had heard about me from someone else in a room that they were in talking about this event. And that unlocked an opportunity for me. And that is so important to remember and make sure you are doing and paying for it. I can't speak at that event. I'm not here. So instead, what I did is take it out to my community and ask who else would like to speak and might be available to speak. So you can pay it forward and create opportunity as opportunity is created for you. So those are 4 very simple things you can do. Buy from businesses, engage on social media, leave them a review, and speak their names in rooms they're not in. 4 things that I expect everybody to do if you believe you are a supporter of business.
Yes, I love that. And I'm going to add a 5th one. Open their emails and reply and tell them what you thought of the email.
Oh yeah, I like that. That's a good one.
Do you know what?
How newsletters and stuff too. Yes.
Right? How amazing. And when someone responds like, whoa, I love this. Like, you know, because in marketing, it feels like you're marketing to a black hole sometimes. Totally. Right.
100%.
So
I love that. That's a great one. I'm going to do that today. I'm going to find
Yes. I love that. Okay. I'm going to quickly grab all of the links and share all of the links of we've got your Instagram here.
Yep.
And we've got the Facebook group if you want to follow along on Facebook. We got Twitter. Where's your favorite social media place to go hang out? We got LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. It's the only place I really hang out. I took myself off the social platforms. I honestly I had to cut myself off. I was like, you're not allowed on these platforms anymore because you are not being productive and you spiral in a negative way.
Do you know what I just did? I just took all of my social media apps off my phone.
Yeah, I did the same. So it's so funny.
Get out of here.
I had to log into Instagram while I was at an event recently. And number 1, I couldn't find the password. So like that was a fail. And for our company. And number 2, I'm using it from my browser, which was just not it. That's not it. But self-preservation, boundaries, it had to be done.
You got to figure, I'm the same. I'll like log on a couple. I'm like, how am I going to post from my desktop? I'll have to go and get a scheduler and all that. But exactly, I don't want to be on the apps all the time. Okay. This has been fantastic. I love wrapping up every podcast with a statement from you. We call this the Work Less, Play More podcast. I want you to fill the blanks. Work less, blank more.
Oh my gosh. I would say for me right now, it is like work less, be present more.
Yeah. What does that mean?
So for me, that hits home. It was one of my, like when you come up with like, what is your word? Focus and presence were mine for 2024. And that's being all in on the things that you're doing when you're doing them. I think my actual word was all in, and it's evolved to be focus and presence. And for me, it really shows up in balancing running 2 companies and having a toddler, and recognizing that I didn't feel like I was able to be all in or present in any of those things at any one time. So it, like somebody I know challenged me and said, so what it really sounds like is you're seeking how you balance those things. And I like have this like visceral negative reaction to the word balance, because I'm not looking to work a 9 to 5. And that's often what I mentally associate with the word balance. And they challenged me and said, that's not what balance means. Balance can mean something unique for you. So for me, it's being able to be all in the things that I'm doing when I'm doing them, and be present with my son when he wants to play hockey for 80 minutes a day, and be all in when I'm in with my leadership team. And that's made a big difference for me so far this year.
Wow. I love it. Amazing. Amazing. And then I'm also going to add in work less, get funded more.
Yes. Love it. Oh my God, that probably should have been mine. But I'm like so introspective as you're asking me that question. I'm like, oh girl, what am I supposed to do with my life?
I love it. I loved your answer. Be present when you're in the thing. When you're in the thing, be present. I love that. And go get yourself funded. Friends, thank you so much for watching, for listening. You can access all the links to be able to connect with Brianna, to be able to connect with Pocketed, to go learn all the things, get your free basic account. In the show notes, if you're listening to the podcast, this will all be in the show notes. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today.
Lindsay, you are so wonderful. Thank you. This is incredibly energizing. Have an awesome afternoon.
Yes, we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Okay, now I have to figure out how to end the live stream.